So this video is going to be looking at the sources that talk about the end of the Peloponnesian War. You can see there is quite a lot of Xenophon, a little bit of Aristotle, some Diodorus, and some Plutarch to have a look at. The end of the war is going to introduce us to a few new key individuals who become really important for the outcome of the war. I don't know what I just did there, sorry. And it also kind of gives us more evidence about the importance of the Persian gold and silver, etc., that's used within the Peloponnesian forces. So we have a new author. I don't think we've talked about Xenophon ever before. I might be wrong. But essentially Xenophon's a pretty useful source. He's not my favourite source author just because of the style he writes in. That's a personal preference. He was a mercenary who fought on behalf of the Spartans. This does not make him necessarily pro-Spartan. It's just he fought for the Spartans, but he was a mercenary, so he was paid to do so. This does mean that he has some fantastic understanding of military issues at the end of the Peloponnesian War, because he was obviously fighting during it. He understands the influence of Persian money, because he would have witnessed it as being part of the soldiers who were paid. He also tries to be very thorough, and he certainly is thorough, but he tries to sort of examine lots of key issues and key events and cause and effect. He's kind of trying to emulate sort of Thucydides' style of writing, which for better or for worse does cause some problems for us. He does try to stay objective, and he certainly tells you a lot of information, which is why I don't like him, because I think he just takes forever to get to the point. Anyway. So his source is going to give us a sort of quite a broad overview of some of the key issues that were going on at the end of the war, and then the rest of the sources will talk us through some key events to have a look at as well. So what we do have is this issue about the Persian and Spartan alliance being kind of found out about in Athens. So when we talked about Pharnabazos before, so he's one of the Persian satraps, he's one of the governors, and essentially news comes out that the Spartans had obtained from the king everything they wanted, and they got the Persian gold. And it sort of comes out in Greece, everyone now knows this alliance has happened. What we do have is the, I can't remember the right word, not influence, it doesn't matter, I'm very tired today. We have this guy here called Cyrus who appears. Now Cyrus is the son of the Persian king, so he's a prince. And he has his own agenda, so he's also trying to secure his own position. He's also got to obey his father, but it does mean at times that he slightly undermines what Pharnabazos and Tissaphernes are trying to do, because obviously he's trying to win favour for himself. But so he's another Persian who becomes influential in this part of the war. So Cyrus becomes involved, and he basically starts to control some of the Ionian states, so this is what it means on the coast, or the Persian coast, and he's also going to support the Spartans in the war, which he has to do because the king has told him to do so, which is essentially what all this bit is doing, which is kind of going, the king sent this letter, I've sent Cyrus as the leader, lord, and he's going to control everything. The Athenians hear about this, they're still trying to get some money from Persia at this point because they don't know about the treaty yet. Cyrus basically doesn't listen to them, and then the Athenians know what's going on. That's what this is going on about in quite a ridiculous amount of detail. So essentially the important bit is the fact they've got Cyrus becoming involved and Sparta's getting the money. Fine. We also have a new Spartan commander come to the forefront, which is, this guy called Lysander. So Lysander is sent as the admiral. So he is given a position because this guy had finished his term of office. Now, an admiral in Sparta could only run for 1 year, and he can't be an admiral again. This is going to become an important point later. So Lysander is sent out as admiral. Lysander is a fantastic admiral. He is a brilliant fighter and a brilliant commander. Now, this is going to cause some issues for him later on at the end of the war, which we'll talk about later on in this video. But at this point, he becomes a really important focus for the Spartan war effort. So he arrives at Rhodes and gets some ships. Rhodes had been an Athenian ally, but had revolted after Sicily. And he also forms a relationship with Cyrus, who's helping the Spartans. So these two work together. And there's a question about the money. Cyrus says his father has been told to give him the money. has no other intentions for himself, but to do everything possible. He brought with him, he said, 500 talents, and if he needs to, he can use his own money. In fact, we'll highlight that while we're at it. And if he has to, he'll even break up the throne. So this kind of shows how willing the Persians were to help the Spartans win the war against Athens. And we got this kind of quite good relationship between Lysander and Cyrus. Obviously, we miss bits of the story that's going on in the Xenophon source, so we're kind of skipping through the periods. What we do have is some kind of conflict within Sparta about the influence of Persia. So we have someone is sent to Cyrus, asked for pay for the soldiers. Pretty certain it's this guy here called Callicratidacus. No, I said it wrong. Callicratidas. There we go. Sorry, I put an extra C in there. He was another Spartan commander. He isn't happy with the influence of the Persians, because obviously the Spartans and Persia fought each other in the Persian War. He said, the Greeks are in a sorry plight, toadying to barbarians, Persians, for the sake of money. So, we're giving up our freedom, we're giving them influence, we shouldn't be. This is disgraceful. And if he went home, he would try and reconcile the Athenians and the Spartans. So he then leaves, and he basically tries to start like a bit of a mutiny, revolt, maybe. And it's mainly because Cyrus seems to be a little reluctant to become involved with Callicratidas. For whatever reason, he seems to be most of the sort of negotiation and action through Lysander instead. So there's this division within the Spartan leadership of the army and of the navy, which is this whole section. I'm trying to race through this Xenophon because it's not particularly exciting. I told you I don't like him very much. We do have some other issues within the army. So there are some troops under another Spartan commander. I've typed it in there, which is this guy. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. And the issues around Chios, who also had been an Athenian ally, had revolted. That they were without food and poorly clad and unshod, they together agreed to make an attack on Chios. Okay, so despite the fact that this particular part of the Spartan fleet, army, was struggling for resources, they're obviously willing to keep the fight on, as it were. Sorry, I've got a really itchy leg. There we go. Better. Now, when this guy here kind of hears about this kind of plot and the fact that they were planning to kind of kill loads of these people in Chios, he has to kind of think about the consequences. So to be putting allied soldiers to death in such numbers was clearly a serious matter, for in this way the Spartans would incur harsh criticism amongst the other Greeks as well. Basically, he doesn't want the Spartans to be compared to the Athenians, who obviously, as we've looked at, have been going around committing, well, let's be honest, mass murder against different allies. So he's a little worried about if they go into Chios and put all these people to death, then they're going to be no better than the Athenians, who they were claiming they were trying to free Greece from, in terms of trying to liberate Hellas. So in the end, they go in. There's some kind of weird plot about reeds. They kill one person with a reed. Everyone throws away the reed to stop someone being murdered. I don't know what the story is really about. Key thing is, though, the people from Chios come aside and they contribute money. So we have allies now of Sparta paying tribute, which is really important. We're talking about the desire for wealth and resources that cause conflict, but also the fact that the Spartans are having to depend on their allies for funds, not just the Persians, but also other allies too. So as a result of all this, people of Chios and other allies gather together. They send ambassadors to Sparta to report the facts and ask for Lysander as commander of the fleet. And this is because he'd won a battle of Notium, and we'll talk about the Battle of Notium very shortly. Lysander's very, very, very popular. Everyone really likes him because he's really successful. Now, he already had been the admiral, so he can't be admiral again. In order to put the pressure on them, the ambassadors are also sent to Cyrus, and he's the Prince of Persia. So as a result, the Spartans give Lysander a new title. They make him a vice admiral. They put in someone else as admiral officially. However, in reality, as it says down here, they put the ships in the command of Lysander. So they kind of circumvent the laws of Sparta to allow Lysander to control the navy. And that's why they can then be successful. Then there's a bit of evidence about Cyrus securing his position here, which we don't really need to worry about too much. We just kill some people, skip it across. What we do have is, let me just double check who this person is. We've got Lysander's kind of, again, he asks for more money from Cyrus, which he gets, so that's fine. He says, we've paid you loads of money, what's going on? But yeah, we'll still give you more money. Lysander then appoints some triremes and some captains, and he pays his soldiers, and the wages are due for him. So again, we've got Spartan reliance or dependency on the Persian gold coming in to fund everything. They then have a meeting, so I'm just rereading the section, and essentially what comes out of the meeting is that Cyrus gives Lysander more money, and so says to the city-states who were under the control of the Persians to pay Lysander the money. And that is kind of it for that massive section of Xenophon. It sounds horrible, but it's not too bad. Essentially, it's Persia giving the Spartans loads of money. Lysander's brilliant. Okay. There are then a series of battles at the end of the Peloponnesian War that you need to be aware of. Now, all these sources here are going to be extra sources. So I've kept them relatively short. Sorry, I was not trying some wrapping paper on purpose because they are additional sources. However, the events that they talk about are really important for explaining why the Athenians lost the Peloponnesian War. So there's a bit of a gap on the specification. They want you to know why the Spartans win, but they don't give you the battles to do it with. So I've added them in to make it easier for you. So there's a couple of battles that we need to be aware of. Some early ones. So there's one about Abydos. So all of these battles, I should point out, take place outside of Persia, so along the Persian coast. So this end bit of the war is sometimes called the Ionian War because it all kind of happens in the Ionia region, but it's just the end of the Peloponnesian War. So the first one is Abydos. So the Athenians sail out to meet him. There'll be some kind of Spartan, don't know which one. And Alcibiades, as I said, has been given the command of the navy, so he is sent out with 18 ships. And the Spartans flee at this particular point, and they go to Abydos. Pharnabazus, Persian governor, comes up to help them. They then sort of shout at each other, nothing really happens. The Athenians sail to Sestus. They capture 30 ships. Then the Athenian ships of 40 are left behind, sailed on the Hellespont from Sestus to collect money. So the Athenians are collecting more tribute. It doesn't tell you anything about the battle, I appreciate, but essentially there's a battle here and the Spartans lose it, and as a result the Athenians are able to destroy some ships and get some money, and then somehow Alcibiades goes to visit his friend Tissaphernes because they have been very close. Tissaphernes has him arrested because he kind of deserted them, went back to Athens, saying that the king had told him he should be making war on the Athenians, not helping them. However, Alcibiades then escapes and he ends up going back into the navy again. Okay, so then there's another battle that happens the year after, which is Cyzicus, of 410, so it's a year later. Again, Alcibiades is the head of the Athenian fleet. The Spartans had fled Abydos and sailed to this place. So Alcibiades went overland and sent the ships round to meet him. In the meantime, they're collecting a load of money, so they've got about the treatment of allies, but also the dependence on allies. And he points out the reason why they're collecting this money is, we have no money at all because of Sicily, etc. And also the revolt of the allies after. Well, the enemy have plenty because they got from the king, so it shows about the impact of the Persian involvement on the war. Okay, they then set off for this place. You're really pleased to know that they've been raining and the sun comes out. This is why I hate Xenophon, it tells you useless information. There's a load of boats. I'm not very good at talking through battles, I'm really sorry. What they do have is there's loads of Athenian boats or ships, whatever, and they're really close to the harbour and they're kind of pincering them in. So the Spartans flee to the shore and Alcibiades lands on the shore and they capture the fleet. Okay, so it's a really big success there. They then sail out against this particular city-state and they win. And they stay for 20 days, raise loads of money. So again, we've got a treatment of allies and other states. They then go to this place and build some fortifications. Again, we're talking about sort of dependence on allies because they levy a 10% tax on all cool cargo sailing through this particular place. they leave a garrison there, and they levy ships. So the Athenians are also trying to grab as much money out of these different states as they can in order to fund the rest of the war. But notice here, the Athenians are being really successful. This is like essentially 2 big battles and like a little takeover of a place in a row. So they're doing really, really well. And as a result of it, the Spartans have to send a letter to Sparta saying, ships lost, Mindarus dead, men starving, don't know what to do. So all these battles are occurring before Lysander has become admiral. So I want to make that really clear in terms of the timeline. And there is a turning point that then comes at Notium, which was mentioned in that Xenophon source earlier on. So Alcibiades is still head of the Athenian fleet, fine, and he has to leave the fleet because this guy has come out of the Hellespont and he's kind of like making some investing, I think, going to this place. So Alcibiades decides to leave. So he leaves his captain in charge of the fleet, Antiochus. Okay, so he sends out he leaves his captain and he tells him very specifically, do not attack Lysander's ships. Okay, however, his captain decides, screw it, we're going to do it anyway. So he sails from Notium to the harbour, and he goes past Lysander's ships. He forms a line of battleship and sails against them. Because of this stupid plan, the Athenians have their ships scattered, and the Athenians eventually take flight, and they lose loads of boats. And Lysander wins this battle, partly through Athenian mistakes, but also because Lysander's fantastic. So the Athenians hear about Notium and they're angry at Alcibiades because they believe he'd lost the ships through neglect of duty because he'd left. And they basically decide to choose 10 new generals, and Alcibiades puts himself into exile. So he leaves and he goes off to a castle and he's happy. The important one, there's a big list of them. Conon is a really important general at the end of the war, hence why I've highlighted him. Different Pericles, just to point out, he's not come from the dead. But they point loads of different generals to take over from him. Fine. So this is the point where Lysander's reputation really grows because they've beaten Lysander. Speaking of Alcibiades, Alcibiades also been very successful up until this point, hence why Lysander becomes very famous and very popular. We then have a very short source about another battle called Arginusel. Now, this battle, how do I describe it in a short one? This is a very short section of a very long source. So if we go through the source and I'll give you more detail about what happened. So it's a naval battle, and the 10 generals, these are Athenian generals, whom victory in naval battle was due, were all condemned to death by a vote. I'll explain why in a minute. The people can deceive through persons provoke their anger. So there's an element of demagogues manipulating the democracy. This could be used in section B later, but also quite handy for the impact of the war in terms of Athenian politics. At this point, the Spartans were actually willing to leave Decisleia, and we know the problems that had been causing, and they wanted to make peace. So actually at this point, because the Spartans have kind of a bit of a losing streak here, excluding Notium, they want to sue for peace, and yet the people of Athens decide not to do so. So you're thinking, well, why did they kill the generals? Good question. So basically there is this big naval battle, fine. Now in the course of the battle, there is this horrific storm, and varying people were killed in the storm itself, as well as in the battle. Now because of the storm, the Athenian commanders were unable to get the bodies from the water. Now, according to the law, they should have collected the bodies and brought them back to Athens for proper burial, obviously religious stuff. Because of the storm, they weren't able to do so. So they came back to Athens and said, yeah, we've lost these people, but we have won the battle, and the Spartans won peace, but at least we've won, and yes, we haven't collected the bodies. Now, because they are elected officials, they are then put on trial for misconduct in office in the assembly, in the ecclesia. Now, during the assembly meeting, there's hearing evidence back and forth about what happened at Arginusel. And the generals point out why it'd be a really stupid thing if they killed these people. One, because we're really good. And two, there was a storm. It wasn't our fault. We couldn't collect the people. As the evidence is being given, a demagogue called Calixenus, fantastic name, appears to, well, doesn't appear, he did, pays people to go around dressed in black, crying out and mourning dead soldiers. Also during the trial, miraculously, a man turns up at the trial in the assembly, soaking wet, and said that he had floated all the way from Ionia back to Athens in a metal tub, like a barrel. And he was therefore a witness, and he had seen that the commanders had neglected their duty. So hearing this, the Athenian people were really angry, and obviously got these people pretending to be mourning, etc., etc. And they decide to vote to kill their successful generals. So all of the generals except 2 of them, or maybe 3 of them, are then killed. So in the stupidity of the moment, the Athenians kill off their experienced, successful commanders. Meaning now they haven't got them for the rest of the war. And they turn down the offer of peace from Sparta. You can hear the contempt in my voice. So this is a massive problem. And it leads into yet another naval battle called Aegis Apotami. With brilliant word of a spelling. Use it maybe in Scrabble because you get lots of points. Okay. Now at this particular point, this is when Lysander is back. He's been made vice admiral. He's going to continue fighting. Now they haven't got any good generals. So they sail out to meet him. They sail to Aegis Apotami. There's a really delightful section here where Xenophon tells you about them having breakfast and like people turning up or not. So at sunrise on the first day, the Athenians formed the ships in line for battle at the mouth of the harbour. Lysander did not put out against them. They sailed home, and then it was late. Fascinating. Now, at this point, Lysander sends out some scouts, and they're basically observing what he does. And he's playing with the Athenians, and he does this for 4 days. So the Athenians keep continuing to sail out to offer battle, so they keep going out, and the Spartans just don't come out to fight them. And the Athenians wait around for a bit, and they sail back in, and they don't really know what's going on. At this point, the disgraced Alcibiades turns up. Of course he does. He lives around the corner, you see. Anyway, sorry, it just makes me chuckle. So he turns up and says, good Lord, don't fight here. You need to change to Cestus, and then you have a harbour and a city. But the generals who were there sort of say, we're in command, not you. Go away. Alcibiades leads, so he does. If only they had listened to Alcibiades, they probably could have won this battle, but they did not. Lysander, the 5th day, sends out his people again. The Athenians send out their people again. Looks like he's not going to do anything. And then suddenly, Lysander sends out his fleet of all the speed and loads of troops. Conon, told he was important, sees the attack. He signals the Athenians to hasten all their might to the ships. But because, obviously, the previous 4 days they've been sailing out to meet the Spartans and haven't done anything, they become a little bit lackadaisical about it all and weren't doing it properly. So now his troops are scattered and he can't muster the troops well. So Lysander's able to capture everybody and he wins this particular battle. Conon flees because he knows he ain't going to win. There's this really unexciting section about messages being sent back and forth, which I won't bore you with. Ultimately, what ends up happening is Lysander sort of captures this guy and has his throat cut, which is not very nice, but hey ho. Okay? Whew. We then have similar version of the story from Diodorus. There's famine in the army, which is bad. There's confusion, so here's key reasons why the Athenians lost. They're panic-stricken because Lysander had suddenly done something. Held out for a short while and gave way. Conon flees. Doesn't want to be prosecuted. Understandably doesn't want to be prosecuted because the last time this happened, the generals won and they killed them all. So understandably, Conon doesn't want to go back to Athens. So he sails away. And the Athenians had run away to Cestus as well. Lysander takes the city but allows the Athenians to depart under truce. He then sails to Samos, sieges the city. Gylippus, the guy we met in Sicily, I'm in the wrong place. He has managed to get loads of money, fine, and takes a load of cash out for himself, which is very naughty. But what we do have is just showing this impact of the Persian gold on on Spartan society. So the Spartans hadn't wanted gold before and weren't greedy, and now you've got one of their key commanders stealing money, which is obviously not very good. He is found out, I will point out, and he has to flee and is condemned to death, but that's not the point. Gylippus should not have stolen the money. So the Athenians have essentially lost at this point. They have now lost the war. So as Xenophon says, the Athenians now besieged by land and sea. They have no ships, no allies, no food. So they have no choice. They continue to hold out, and they start giving out loads of rights to people to try and kind of protect the democracy. However, the food supplies run out because they're surrounded. So they send ambassadors to Agis, the king of Sparta, and they're willing to join the Spartan alliance if they can keep their walls and the port of Piraeus, etc., etc. However, what actually happens is a group of what tyrants called the 30. So they are literally 30 of these key people. None of the names are particularly important, hence why I haven't given to you. And they basically dismantle the democracy in Athens. And they set up a new council, and these 30 rule the city absolutely horrifically. And they're basically put in place by the Spartans. So the 30s were elected, and they're not elected, so they're put in place by the Spartans. And they demolished the long walls and the walls of their port. So now the Athenians are no longer protected by the long walls. They've surrendered. They appointed members of the council and other magistrates to do what they saw fit, as in do what you want. First measure is to arrest and put on trial for their lives those who are generally known to have made a living during the time of democracy acting as informers. Why did I not do that whole thing? So they start these executions of people, and the council is quite happy to do this, which is nice. The 30 start to discover how they get the power to do what they liked. So they basically tried to persuade Lysander to support their request and ask for a Spartan garrison to be set up in Athens. Lysander agrees, sets up a garrison. And then at this point, they start to arrest everybody, and they start killing loads of people. And thousands and thousands of people die in Athens as a result of the 30. And it's absolutely horrific. And they kill anyone who basically is going to disagree with having this oligarchy in Athens. Now, if you're thinking about our causes of conflict and political ideologies, one of the key things is about the conflict between democracy and an oligarchy, and the fact that Sparta allows an oligarchy to be set up in Athens shows they disliked democracy. So it was a cause of conflict. In fact, even just changing the government, has led to conflict in itself, because we have this mass execution in Athens. It's absolutely awful. I mean, the tyrants were horrific. However, as you can see, there is a restoration of the democracy. And this is all to do with some of the impacts of Lysander, etc. So remember, there are two kings in Sparta. There's Agis, and there is another king called Pausanias, different Pausanias from we've met previously in the Persian War. Oh, right. Okay. Now, it says here that the kings were aware the societies had formed. Hang on, there we go. So this is talking about Lysander. So Lysander had been setting up little fortifications in the different Greek city-states. And as a result of this, the kings were afraid of Lysander because they thought that the city's power was the master of Hellas. So they think sort of like Lysander's the one in control of everything. So they took measures disposing his friends everywhere and restoring the management of affairs to the people. So at this point, they decide to get rid of the 30, partly because there is mass executions is really bad, but mainly because they're afraid of Lysander's power. Lysander comes back and he sort of says, oligarchies chastise the democracies, you've got political ideologies, there's a conflict there, but because they are jealous of Lysander, they don't trust him, they don't want him to basically recapture Athens and force an oligarchy on them for a second time. So Pausanias, one of the Spartan kings, goes on behalf of the tyrants against people, but really puts up a war, and Lysander will not regain the master of Athens. So he basically puts the democracy back in place in Athens to stop Lysander's power. He robbed Lysander of his ambitious tropes. So there is this kind of political impact of the Peloponnesian War on Sparta. We have the rise of kind of key individuals who are really powerful, being Lysander in this case. This causes political conflict within Sparta. Now, there are other effects on Sparta as well of the Peloponnesian War. So Xenophon Constitution of the Spartans kind of talks through like how they ran their city and how things changed. So, before, the Spartans preferred to live together at home with moderate fortunes. Obviously, they didn't rely on money, and they didn't like to go abroad. And they were afraid to be found in possession of gold. Whereas nowadays there are some who even boast of their possessions. So there is a societal change in Sparta as a result of the influence of Persian gold. They strive far more earnestly to exercise rule, so they're willing to go around conquering places and start acting essentially like the Athenians, taking over places, imposing tributes and all the rest of it. As it says here, the Spartans also levied tribute upon the peoples they had conquered. So now Athens has lost its power. They had been an oligarchy, they've gone back to a democracy, they're no longer a threat to Greece, but now you do have this rise of Sparta instead, who are kind of acting like the Athenians, but not quite as badly. They're collecting tribute, their society's been changed, their political situation is kind of being maybe not attacked, but obviously is under pressure because of the importance of Lysander against the kings. Everybody's been impacted really badly by the Peloponnesian War. And that is it. That is all the source material on the Peloponnesian War. If I scroll down in the source book, section B, which we're not going to be starting for quite a long time. Like a really long time. So that's it for the Peloponnesian War. The last little bit of the war kind of flies by because it's a series of battles and then it kind of ends and it's the end of it. So that's it. I don't know how to finish this video because it just kind of finishes. Obviously, make sure you have a good timeline of the key events of the Peloponnesian War to make it a bit clearer. You've obviously got all the previous videos on the Persian and Peloponnesian War for Section A. So if you need to go back and have a look at them again, they will be staying on the playlist right through to the end of second year. And that is it.